Get on the ground before I put you there permanently. The voice, a thunderclap of raw menace, ripped through the opulent silence of éclat. Dante Shadow Reyes aimed his military-grade assault rifle at the one person left standing. The lone black waitress. She remained a statue of defiance amidst the chaos, her expression a mask of unreadable calm as 30 of Chicago's wealthiest diners whimpered on the cold marble floor. Shadow studied her face, a flicker of something, confusion, recognition, crossing his eyes behind the ski mask. His weapon, just a moment ago a rigid extension of his will, wavered. "That's impossible," he breathed, the words swallowed by the cavernous dining room. "Welcome back to the channel, my friends. I have missed you all more than words can say. Thank you for sticking with me, for being part of this incredible community. Your loyalty means the world. If you're ready for a story that will grab you by the throat and not let go, do me a favor right now. Smash that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from. Your support is the fuel that keeps these stories coming, and trust me, you are not going to want to miss a single one. Now, let's get back to the storm. The colossal crystal chandelier, a galaxy of shimmering light, bathed éclat's main dining room in a warm, deceptive glow. Maya Vance balanced 3 plates of pan-seared scallops along her left arm, her movements a symphony of controlled grace. Each step was calibrated, each pivot precise. A military discipline artfully disguised as the effortless elegance of high-end service. Her black uniform was starched to a razor's edge, her silver nameplate glinting like a medal. She moved through a battlefield of hushed conversations, where Chicago's elite brokered billion-dollar deals over bottles of wine that cost more than her entire year's salary. "Excuse me, miss." Chadwick Thorne's voice, dripping with condescension, sliced through the air at table 12. His pinstriped suit was a bespoke masterpiece, an armor of wealth that probably cost more than Maya's car, and he wielded that knowledge like a weapon. "This wine is utterly wrong. I distinctly ordered the 2015 Chateau Margaux, not this vinegar." Maya approached, her steps even, her spine straight. She knew with absolute certainty that she had served him the exact, astronomically expensive wine he'd requested. But in this world, contradicting a man like Chadwick Thorne was a form of professional suicide. "My sincerest apologies, sir. I will speak with the sommelier immediately." "Don't apologize," he sneered, leaning back. "Just fix it." His companion, Brittany Davenport, examined her diamond-encrusted watch with an air of theatrical boredom. "Some people," she sighed, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear, "simply cannot comprehend quality. It's a matter of breeding, I suppose." The words were poisoned darts, aimed to wound, but Maya's face remained a placid lake. 8 years in the Navy's most clandestine Special Operations Unit had forged her into something unshakable. She had learned, through fire and blood, when to engage the enemy and when to endure the assault. This wasn't a firefight in a dusty village halfway across the world. This was a different kind of war. This was survival. At table 6, Julian Sterling sat alone, his laptop closed. He'd been watching the exchange, not with idle curiosity, but with a focused intensity. His Navy suit was just as expensive as Thorne's, but he wore it like a second skin, not a costume. Something about the waitress, Maya, had captured his attention the moment she'd seated him. It wasn't just her grace. It was the economy of her movement, the controlled efficiency that spoke of someone trained for life-or-death precision under unimaginable pressure. "Maya?" Kevin Fisher, the restaurant manager, materialized at her side. His reedy frame vibrated with a constant, nervous energy. "Table 8 needs their appetizers. Pick up the pace." "Yes, sir." Maya turned toward the kitchen, her path taking her past Julian's table. For a fleeting second, their eyes met. His were filled with a sharp, analytical curiosity. Hers held a universe of secrets he couldn't begin to decipher. In the blistering heat of the kitchen, Maya collected the plates for table 8. Chef Antoine, a famously temperamental artist with a flour-dusted apron and a god complex, grabbed her by the wrist as she reached for a sprig of parsley. "Careful with the presentation, girl," he hissed. "These people pay for perfection." Maya's training flared to life. It was an involuntary, deeply ingrained reflex. Her free hand snapped toward his wrist, her muscles primed for a joint-locking maneuver that could shatter bone. She caught herself a millisecond before impact, the adrenaline a bitter taste in her mouth. She took a deep, centering breath. "Of course, chef." Back in the dining room, Julian observed a disturbing pattern. The way the staff interacted with Maya was fundamentally different. White servers were treated as colleagues. Maya was treated as a subordinate to be commanded, corrected, and dismissed. He'd dined here 100 times and had never truly seen it before. The realization settled in his chest, a cold, uncomfortable weight. Snap! A woman at table 4 snapped her fingers like she was calling a dog. "We've been waiting an eternity for our check." Maya had delivered their check 5 minutes ago. She approached with the same unshakable poise. "I placed it right here, ma'am." She gestured to the black leather folder sitting directly beside the woman's elbow. "Don't you get smart with me?" the woman snapped. "I know when I've been given a check." Julian saw it then, an almost imperceptible tightening of Maya's jaw. Her hands remained steady at her sides, but for a split second, a fire blazed in her eyes. It wasn't submission, it was something harder, something forged. What did this woman do before this? The thought struck him as profound. He never wondered about the lives of servers. They were ambiance, part of the scenery. But Maya felt different. She felt coiled, like a spring under immense tension. "Maya, table 12 wants you." Kevin's sharp voice cut across the room again. She walked back into the lion's den. Chadwick Thorne was holding court, his chair pushed back, an arrogant king on his throne. "I want you to understand something," he said, his voice loud, performative, meant for the entire room. "When I frequent an establishment of this caliber, I expect a certain level of competence. Not whatever this is." He waved a dismissive hand in her direction. "Perhaps you should seriously consider whether you're truly qualified for this position." The words were designed to humiliate, to break her. Maya's composure didn't crack, but Julian saw her fingers curl, just for a moment, into tight fists at her sides. He saw her stance shift, a subtle widening, her weight moving forward onto the balls of her feet. Then, just as quickly, she corrected it, smoothing her expression back into a mask of polite neutrality. "I understand, sir. I will strive to do better." But Julian had seen it, that flash of something lethal, something highly, dangerously trained. Brittany leaned forward, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Perhaps you should find work more suited to your background. I'm sure there are other options available." The racist insinuation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Several diners openly turned to stare. Maya stood perfectly still, but Julian, watching with the focus of a hawk, noticed her breathing had changed. It was deeper now, controlled, rhythmic, the breathing of someone managing pure, unadulterated rage through disciplined technique. "Of course, ma'am. Enjoy your evening." As Maya walked away, her dignity a shield around her, Julian made a decision. A small act that would change the trajectory of everything. He raised his hand. "Miss Vance." She approached his table, a flicker of surprise in her eyes that he knew her name from the small silver plate. Yes, sir? The service tonight, Julian said, his voice calm but resonant, carrying just enough to reach the surrounding tables, has been exceptional. Thank you. It was simple. It was basic human decency, but in the toxic, stratified atmosphere of Eclat, it felt like a revolution. Maya's mask slipped. Just for a heartbeat, genuine surprise and a hint of gratitude softened her features. Thank you, sir. Is there anything else I can get for you? Actually, yes, he said, his eyes asking a different question entirely. Tell me who you really are. What would you recommend for dessert? Before she could answer, the grand front doors didn't open. They exploded inward. 5 men, clad in black tactical gear, ski masks obscuring their faces, stormed the restaurant. Assault weapons were raised, sweeping the room with deadly intent. Diners screamed, a wave of panic and terror washing over the room. People scrambled, diving under tables. Crystal goblets shattered as heavy oak chairs were overturned. Everyone on the ground, now! The leader, a tall man with the broad shoulders of a linebacker, roared the command. His voice was raw, street-hardened Chicago. Hands where I can see them! No heroes tonight! Julian dropped to his knees, his mind racing, but his eyes stayed up. Through the chaos, he searched for one person. He found her. Maya Vance stood frozen in the very center of the dining room, the only soul still on her feet besides the gunman. But she wasn't frozen with fear. He could see it in her eyes. She was processing, calculating. Her gaze wasn't wide with terror. It was narrow with focus, tracking each gunman's position, their weapon discipline, their patterns of movement. And her stance had shifted again. No longer subtle. It was unmistakable. Balanced. Centered. Ready. Who are you? The lead gunman, Shadow, stepped toward her, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I said, get down, waitress. Maya's reply was soft, steady, and delivered in a voice that belonged to a completely different person. A person trained to operate in the darkest corners of the world. A person trained to kill. No. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Maya Vance had just defied 5 heavily armed men, while 30 terrified socialites watched from the floor. The lead gunman, Dante Shadow Reyes, tilted his head, a gesture of pure disbelief. Did this little waitress just tell me no? His voice was laced with a strange mix of anger and genuine confusion. No one ever defied Shadow Reyes and lived to talk about it. But Maya's training had taken over. The world around her slowed down. Her breathing became a quiet, rhythmic engine. Her vision sharpened, every detail popping into hyper-focus. She heard the soft weeping from under table 4, the heavy, panicked breathing of a gunman in the kitchen, the delicate scrape of a diamond watch against the marble floor. And most importantly, she tracked 5 heartbeats, 5 breathing patterns, 5 weapons, all held by men who had just walked into a hornet's nest they couldn't possibly comprehend. From his position on the floor, Julian Sterling watched the transformation. The subservient, polite waitress had evaporated. In her place stood something else entirely. Something predatory. Her posture was now a perfect combat stance, weight distributed for maximum stability and explosive power. This wasn't fear. This was absolute, terrifying focus. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," Shadow growled, stepping closer, his rifle coming up to point directly at her chest. "Get on the ground before I put you there permanently." Maya turned slowly, deliberately, to face him. As their eyes met through the slits of his ski mask, a jolt went through him. A ghost of a memory, trying to claw its way to the surface. His voice dropped, losing its edge, now tinged with uncertainty. "Do I know you?" "Pilsen." Maya's voice was devoid of emotion. 10 years ago. Corner of 18th and Blue Island. You were Dante Reyes then. Little brother used to tag buildings. The words hit Shadow like a physical blow. He went rigid. That's impossible. That girl, she joined the Navy. She's gone. I came back. The revelation was a bucket of ice water to his face. Maya Vance, the quiet, determined girl from the neighborhood who had vanished into the military, was standing in front of him in a waitress uniform. But the way she stood, the way her eyes scanned the room, told a different story. This wasn't Maya the waitress. This was Petty Officer First Class Maya Vance, Special Warfare Operator. A ghost herself, trained in close-quarters combat, advanced weapon systems, and tactical operations that could topple small governments. Julian processed what he was witnessing. The woman who had just served him coffee wasn't just a veteran. She was something elite, something lethal. One of Shadow's crew, a twitchy man named Marco, grew impatient. "What are you waiting for, D? Pop her and let's get the cash." "Shut up!" Shadow hissed, his eyes never leaving Maya's. "You have no idea who this is." Hector, the hulking muscle of the group, let out a nervous laugh. "It's just some waitress, man. Stop being a drama queen." Maya's gaze shifted to Hector. 6'4", maybe 280 pounds. He was holding his rifle with sloppy discipline, his finger resting on the trigger guard. An amateur. She calculated the distance, the angles, the timing. Hector was 8 feet away. Marco was to her left, 12 feet. A nervous rookie named Leo was crouched by the bar, 15 feet away. The getaway driver, a guy named Sal, was still by the door, 20 feet back. Every one of them was distracted, their attention fixed on the bizarre reunion between their leader and a waitress. None of them were prepared for what happened next. Maya moved. It wasn't a rush. It was an explosion. Her first step erased the 8 feet to Hector in a blink. Her left hand, fingers rigid, struck his throat in a precise nerve strike. Simultaneously, her right hand clamped onto his weapon's barrel, twisting it violently towards the ceiling. Hector's finger spasmed on the trigger, a reflexive action sending a deafening burst of automatic fire into the magnificent chandelier. A rain of shattered crystal cascaded down as Maya used Hector's forward momentum against him, driving her knee with brutal force into his solar plexus. The air left his lungs in a gut-wrenching whoosh. Hector dropped like a sack of cement. Marco spun, bringing his weapon around. He was a lifetime too slow. Maya had already moved again, using Hector's collapsing body as a shield. She rolled right, a fluid, silent motion coming up inside Marco's firing arc before he could even acquire a target. Her elbow, a piston of solid bone, connected with his temple. It was a surgical, lights-out strike. Marco crumpled unconscious onto a table of half-eaten appetizers. The rookie, Leo, panicked. He opened fire, spraying a wild burst of bullets in Maya's general direction. But she was already gone, a phantom diving behind the thick marble partition of the bar. Bullets sparked and chipped marble inches from where her head had been. "Stop shooting, you idiot!" Shadow screamed. "You'll hit the hostages." Maya used Leo's pause to her advantage. She vaulted over the bar with the athletic grace of a jungle cat, landing silently behind him. She grabbed his rifle with both hands and twisted, leveraging her entire body weight. The sickening snap of breaking bone echoed through the now silent restaurant. Leo shrieked in agony and collapsed to his knees, clutching his shattered wrist. 15 seconds. Julian watched, his mind reeling, his perception of reality fundamentally altered. 3 men down. This wasn't a brawl. This was a symphony of violence, executed with the precision of a master surgeon. Every move was calculated, every strike designed to disable, not to kill. Maya Vance was a weapon, operating on a level he couldn't comprehend. Sal, the driver by the door, fumbled for his sidearm. Maya was already moving towards him when Shadow's voice cut through the chaos, raw and desperate. "Maya, stop!" She froze. Only Dante Reyes knew that name. Only people from the old neighborhood called her Maya. Her moment of hesitation, a flicker, a breath, was all Sal needed. His pistol came up, but he didn't aim at her. He aimed at Chadwick Thorne, who was pathetically trying to crawl towards an exit. "One more step, and the rich boy gets it," Sal screamed, his voice cracking with fear. Maya's training warred with her instincts. She could close the distance to Sal before he fired, but not if his finger was already tightening on the trigger. Chadwick's life, as worthless as he had proven himself to be, was still a life. And Maya couldn't let an innocent or even a guilty person die on her watch. "Smart girl," Sal stammered, emboldened. "Now back away from my crew." Maya slowly raised her hands, taking a step back, but Shadow was studying her, the way she moved, the efficiency of her takedowns, and he saw something that made his blood run cold. "Wait," Shadow whispered, a new kind of fear in his voice. "You're not just Navy. You're Spec Ops." Maya's silence was his answer. "How special?" he asked, though he already knew. The answer was written in the bodies of his unconscious crew. "Special enough," she replied, her voice a low promise. The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. Naval Special Warfare Command. The elite of the elite. Fewer than 200 active female operators in the entire damn program. Maya Vance wasn't a veteran. She was a scalpel designed by the U.S. government to excise threats like him from the face of the earth. Julian finally, truly understood. The woman who had silently endured racist taunts and public humiliation could have killed every single person in this room with her bare hands. She chose not to. She chose restraint. She chose to protect the very people who had treated her like she was less than human. Brittany Davenport, still huddled under table 12, hissed at Chadwick. "Do something! You always brag about how you can handle any situation." Chadwick's face was a mask of ashen terror. The woman he'd belittled 30 minutes ago had just demonstrated capabilities that belonged on a movie screen, not in his favorite restaurant. Shadow made his decision. This robbery was a catastrophic failure. Being in an enclosed space with Maya Vance was a death sentence for anyone who pushed her too far. His crew was lucky to still be breathing. "We're leaving," Shadow announced, his voice tight. "What about the score?" Marco groaned from the floor, clutching his head. "Forget the score," Shadow snapped, backing towards the door. His weapon was still up, but it was no longer pointed at Maya. "Some jobs aren't worth dying for." Sal kept his gun trained on Chadwick, shuffling backward toward the exit. "This is crazy, D. It's one girl." "That girl," Shadow said with chilling finality, "could kill all of us before we made it to the sidewalk. Now move." Maya watched them retreat, her mind calculating the odds of pursuit. Her training screamed at her to neutralize the remaining threats, but the room was full of terrified civilians. A single stray bullet could find an innocent target. She held her ground. As the last of the robbers reached the shattered doors, Shadow turned back one last time. His voice was low, meant only for her. "Maya, when the news gets a hold of this, and they will, they're gonna ask questions. Be careful who you trust with the answers." The warning was heavy with a meaning she understood instantly. Her service record was classified. The operations her unit conducted were beyond top secret. If the wrong people learned what she was truly capable of, her quiet, anonymous life would be incinerated. The gunman vanished into the cold Chicago night, leaving behind a dining room of shattered glass, shattered egos, and a waitress who had just redefined the meaning of power for everyone present. A long, heavy silence stretched across the room, broken only by a few ragged sobs. Then, movement. People began to emerge from under tables, checking themselves for injuries, their minds struggling to process the whirlwind of violence they had just witnessed. Maya stood in the center of it all, an island of calm in a sea of chaos, surrounded by unconscious men and glittering debris. Her black uniform was torn at the shoulder, and a thin line of blood trickled from a cut on her cheek. But she remained standing, alert, her senses still scanning for the next threat. Julian rose slowly, his eyes locked on her face. Everything suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. The precise movements, the controlled response to verbal abuse, the way she carried herself like someone for whom life and death decisions were a daily reality. "Is everyone all right?" Maya's voice cut through the stunned silence. It was no longer the soft tone of a server. It was a voice of command, of authority. Murmurs of yes and "I think so" rippled through the room. Miraculously, no one was seriously injured. The men she had taken down were breathing, unconscious but alive. Kevin Fisher, the manager, stumbled out from behind the host station, his face a mottled mix of fear and, bizarrely, anger. "Maya, what in God's name did you think you were doing? You could have gotten someone killed." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Maya had just saved every person in the room, and the first response from her boss was blame. "She saved our lives," Julian said, his voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of power. He stood up fully, brushing dust from his suit. "All of our lives." Chadwick Thorne, however, struggled to his feet, his fear quickly transmuting into a fouler emotion. "She's dangerous. Did you see what she did? That's not normal. People like that are a liability." Brittany nodded vigorously, clinging to his arm. "We can't have someone like that working here. What if she snaps one day? What if she decides one of us is the enemy?" Maya felt the energy in the room shift. The initial shock and gratitude were being poisoned, curdling into suspicion and fear. The very people she had just risked her life to protect were already beginning to see her as the real threat. Of course, she thought with a bitter irony, save their lives, and they'll find a way to make you the villain. "That's enough," Julian's voice was a blade, cutting through the rising murmur. "This woman just stopped a violent armed robbery. Anyone suggesting she is the problem needs to seriously re-examine their priorities." But the poison was spreading. Other diners whispered amongst themselves, casting nervous, fearful glances at Maya. The woman who had been invisible 30 minutes ago was now the most terrifying person in the room. Kevin pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed. "I'm calling the police, and Maya, we'll need to have a talk in my office." Maya understood. It wasn't a talk, it was a termination. Saving their lives had just cost her the job she desperately needed to survive. 20 seconds, she thought. It took 20 seconds to go from hero to pariah. But as her eyes swept the room, one face stood out from the crowd of frightened, judgmental stares. Julian Sterling was watching her, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with something she had rarely seen directed at her in her civilian life. Respect. For the first time since the ordeal began, Maya allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Maybe those 20 seconds were worth it, after all. The wail of Chicago police sirens grew from a distant cry to a piercing shriek, flooding the street outside Eclat. Maya Vance stood amidst the wreckage, watching the room's fragile gratitude fracture and turn against her. "Everyone step away from her," Chadwick Thorne commanded, his voice regaining its usual arrogance now that the immediate danger was gone. "We don't know what else she's capable of." Detective Harding burst through the doors, a seasoned veteran in her late 40s, flanked by 4 uniformed officers with their weapons drawn. Her eyes took in the scene in a single, practiced sweep. 4 unconscious suspects, a room full of terrified 1%ers, and 1 calm, composed black woman standing in the middle of the storm. "Hands visible, everyone." Harding's voice was pure, no-nonsense authority. She surveyed the broken glass, the scattered assault rifles, the overturned tables. "Who can tell me what happened here?" Thorne stepped forward instantly, eager to shape the narrative. "That woman," he said, pointing a trembling finger at Maya. "She attacked those men, viciously. We're lucky she didn't kill one of us in the crossfire." Maya's jaw tightened. Attacked, not defended, not saved. Attacked. "Ma'am." Detective Harding approached Maya, her gaze cautious but respectful. Something about Maya's bearing, the ramrod-straight posture, the controlled breathing, pinged the detective's finely tuned instincts. This wasn't a civilian who got lucky. This was a professional. "Can you tell me your name?" "Maya Vance. I work here." "And can you tell me what happened?" Before Maya could speak, Brittany Davenport cut in, her voice shrill. "She went berserk. The robbers told us all to get down, and instead of complying like the rest of us, she started fighting them. It was absolutely terrifying." "Terrifying for whom?" Julian Sterling's voice cut through the noise like a scalpel. He stood now, a formidable presence. "The armed men pointing assault rifles at your head, or the woman who stopped them?" Kevin Fisher, the manager, scurried over, sweat plastering his thinning hair to his forehead. "Detective, I need to make something crystal clear. As of this moment, Maya Vance is no longer an employee of this establishment. Her actions tonight were in no way sanctioned by the management of ECLA." The ground seemed to fall away beneath Maya's feet. Not only was she being cast as the villain, she was now officially unemployed. Kevin was preemptively severing ties, shielding the restaurant from any potential liability before the first police report was even filed. "Mr. Fisher," Detective Harding said slowly, her eyes narrowing, "are you telling me you're firing an employee for preventing a massacre in your restaurant?" "I'm protecting my customers and my staff from an individual with clear, demonstrable violent tendencies that we were not made aware of," Kevin replied, his voice gaining a self-righteous confidence. "We conduct background checks, but obviously something was missed." "What was missed?" Maya's voice was quiet, but held a steel edge that made Kevin flinch. "My 8 years of honorable service in the United States Navy? My spotless criminal record? Or the fact that I'm one of the few people in this city actually qualified to handle a situation like this?" "Qualified?" A woman in her 60s, Dr. Albright, spoke up from table 9. "Young lady, qualification involves calling 911 and following proper protocol. What you did was vigilantism." The word, vigilante, spread through the room like a virus. Maya watched as the faces of people she had served for months, people whose dinner orders she knew by heart, hardened with suspicion. They had witnessed her efficiency, her lethality, and that capability terrified them far more than the clumsy brutality of the robbers. An officer, kneeling beside the unconscious men, called out to Harding, "They're all breathing, Detective. Looks like precision strikes. Non-lethal takedowns. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." "That's what's so frightening," Thorne declared, seizing the opportunity. "She knew exactly how to hurt people. What kind of waitress has skills like that?" "The kind who served her country," Julian said firmly, his patience clearly exhausted. "The kind who put her life on the line so people like you could sit in fancy restaurants and complain about the wine." Brittany let out a bitter, derisive laugh. "Oh, please, don't romanticize it. She's a waitress from the South Side who snapped. It's as simple as that." The racist dog whistle was deafening. Detective Harding's expression went from professional to icy. "Ma'am," she said to Brittany, I'm going to need you to step back and allow me to conduct my investigation." Maya felt the familiar, crushing weight of judgment. She'd faced it in the military, in rooms full of men who couldn't accept that she was not only their equal, but often their superior. People wanted their heroes to fit a certain mold. A young black woman demonstrating elite combat skills wasn't heroic to them. It was threatening. "Detective Harding," Maya said, her voice pulling the detective's attention back to her. "I'd like to give my statement now." "Of course. Let's step over here." Harding led her to a quieter corner, away from the prying eyes and whispers. "Walk me through it. Exactly what happened." Maya recounted the events with the detached precision of an after-action report. 5 hostiles entered. She assessed the threat matrix. She neutralized 4 when they presented an imminent danger to civilian life. She allowed the 5th to escape to de-escalate the situation and prevent crossfire casualties. "And your background?" Harding asked, though her suspicions were already solidifying. "Navy, 8 years. What unit?" "Naval Special Warfare Command." Harding's eyebrows shot up. "Special Warfare. SEALs, SWCC, the shadowy units most people only saw in movies. What was your rate?" "Petty Officer First Class, Special Warfare Operator." The confirmation settled Harding's suspicions. Maya Vance wasn't just a veteran. She was a Tier 1 operator. The kind of person who could dismantle a terrorist cell before breakfast and disappear without a trace. What in God's name was someone with that resume doing waiting tables on the Gold Coast? "Why didn't you pursue the last suspect?" Harding tested her. "Too many civilians in the potential line of fire. My primary objective was preservation of life, not suspect apprehension." It was the textbook answer, the professional answer. But Harding heard the subtext. Restraint. This woman hadn't pursued him because she knew she could have caught him, knew she could have stopped all 5 of them if civilian safety hadn't been her top priority. Across the room, Thorne was pontificating to a rapt audience of fellow diners. "I'm telling you, someone with that kind of violent programming shouldn't be allowed to work with the public. What if she'd decided we were the threat? What if she'd snapped?" "She saved your life." Julian's voice was dangerously quiet. 20 minutes ago, a man was about to put a bullet in your head. Now you're complaining about the person who stopped him." "I didn't ask her to save me," Thorne shot back, his voice rising. "I didn't consent to be a pawn in some Rambo fantasy." The sheer absurdity of the statement was breathtaking. Chadwick Thorne, a man whose net worth was in the hundreds of millions, was outraged that he had been saved from armed robbers because no one had asked his permission first. Dr. Albright nodded sagely. "There are proper channels for these things. The police, security, professionals." "She is a professional." Julian's frustration was palpable. "Evidently more professional than anyone else in this room." Kevin Fisher, seeing the escalating argument, made his move. "Maya, I need you to collect your belongings and vacate the premises immediately. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you." The dismissal was as swift as it was brutal. Fired on the spot. No severance, no gratitude, no acknowledgement that she had prevented a bloodbath. "You're firing her for saving your customers?" Julian stared at Kevin, his expression unreadable but radiating cold fury. "I'm protecting my business," Kevin stammered. "Tonight proved that Maya Vance poses an unacceptable risk." Maya felt something inside her. Not break, but harden. She'd anticipated this, but the systematic character assassination by the very people she'd protected still cut deep. Detective Harding stepped back into the group, having overheard the exchange. "Mr. Fisher, I would strongly advise you to reconsider making any personnel decisions during an active police investigation. Ms. Vance's actions likely prevented multiple homicides here tonight." "My decision stands," Kevin said, puffing out his chest. "ECLA cannot and will not employ someone with her obvious capacity for violence." Capacity for violence, Harding repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. She's a decorated combat veteran who used the minimum force necessary to neutralize an active shooter situation. That's not a capacity for violence. That's a capacity for protection. The very thing your patrons pay for. But the narrative was already being written on a dozen smartphones. Other diners were recording, texting, posting. Maya realized with a sinking feeling that her life, her quiet, anonymous life, was about to become a viral spectacle. "I want her arrested," Brittany Davenport announced suddenly. "She assaulted those men. I want to press charges." "Ma'am," Detective Harding said, her patience stretched to its limit. "She acted in defense of herself and others during the commission of a violent felony. It is a textbook case of justified use of force." "I don't care about your textbook," Brittany shrieked. "I care about feeling safe, and that woman makes me feel anything but safe." The fear was turning them into a mob. Maya watched it happen with the detached analysis of an operator who'd seen this same psychology play out in war zones. Fear makes people irrational. Fear makes them cruel. Julian stepped closer to Maya, subtly positioning himself between her and the growing hostility of the crowd. "Detective, is Miss Vance free to go? She's clearly not welcome here." Harding nodded. "We have her contact information. Miss Vance will be in touch." Maya walked toward the staff area to get her purse and jacket, passing the tables she had served just an hour before. Conversations died as she passed. Eyes followed her every move, tracking her as if she were a caged tiger that might suddenly break free. In the small locker room, she grabbed her worn leather jacket and her small purse. 8 months of her life, reduced to 2 items. When she emerged, Julian was waiting for her by the shattered doors. "Ms. Vance, may I have a word with you outside?" Thorne scoffed from across the room. "Be careful, Sterling. You don't know what you're getting yourself into?" Julian's reply was cold enough to freeze fire. "On the contrary, Thorne, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. The real question is, do you?" Outside, the cold November air of Chicago bit at Maya's skin. A barricade of police cars and news vans had formed, their flashing lights painting the chaotic scene in strobes of red and blue. "Are you all right?" Julian asked, his voice softer now. Maya almost laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "I just got fired for saving a room full of millionaires. I'm peachy." "That's not what I asked." She looked at him then, really looked at him. Julian Sterling, CEO of Sterling Enterprises, a titan of the tech industry, was asking about her emotional state after she'd been publicly vilified and cast aside. Most men of his stature would be in their armored cars by now, calling their therapists and moving on. "Why do you care?" she asked, the question raw and genuine. "Because what happened in there," he said, his eyes meeting hers, "was wrong, on every conceivable level." Maya studied his face in the flashing emergency lights. She saw no pity, no hidden agenda. Just a quiet, resolute conviction. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate the sentiment, but this is how the world works for people who look like me. I've learned not to expect anything different." "People who look like you?" he asked, though he knew the answer. "Black women who refuse to stay in the boxes people build for them," she said, the truth a stark challenge between them. This was his off-ramp. He could offer a few more pleasantries, get in his car, and drive back to his perfectly ordered, privileged life. "What if I told you," he said quietly, "that it doesn't have to work that way?" "I'd say you're a hopeless optimist. I'd say I'm a businessman who knows talent when he sees it." Before she could form a reply, Detective Harding approached them. "Ms. Vance, one last thing. The suspect who recognized you, Dante Reyes, we've got a sheet on him a mile long. Armed robbery, assault, you name it. Are you sure you don't know where he might hole up?" Maya's mind flashed to an old, abandoned warehouse on the south side, a place Dante's grandmother owned, a place they used to use as a clubhouse when they were kids, a place he would absolutely go to ground. But admitting that meant opening a door to a past she had sealed shut with iron and concrete. "I haven't lived in that neighborhood for 10 years, Detective. People change, they move on." It was a deflection, not a lie. Harding studied her, the detective's eyes seeing more than Maya was comfortable with. "Well, if you happen to remember anything, give me a call." She handed Maya a business card. "And Ms. Vance, what you did in there tonight, that was bravery. Don't let any of those fools convince you otherwise." As Harding walked away, Julian turned back to her. "She's right, you know. What you did was extraordinary." "What I did was stupid," Maya countered, the bitterness returning. "I revealed myself to a room full of people who would rather see me as a monster than a protector. Now my life is about to get very, very complicated. Maybe complicated isn't always a bad thing." She looked at him sharply. "Easy for you to say. Your complicated is a fluctuating stock price. My complicated is men like Chadwick Thorne using their power to destroy my reputation because I made them feel insignificant." "And what if you didn't have to worry about men like Chadwick Thorne ever again?" he asked. "What are you proposing?" He pulled a sleek, heavy business card from his wallet. "I'm proposing that your talents are being criminally wasted in the service industry. I'm proposing that a woman with your unique skill set deserves a hell of a lot better than this." Maya took the card, but didn't look at it. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate whatever this is, but I don't accept charity." "Good," he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips, "because I'm not offering any." She finally looked down. Julian Sterling, CEO, Sterling Enterprises, a global tech behemoth, the kind of company whose decisions shaped economies. "I'll think about it," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "That's all I'm asking?" As Julian walked toward his waiting town car, Maya stood alone on the sidewalk, the chaos of the scene swirling around her. Through the windows of éclat, she could see police taking statements, staff cleaning up the mess her heroism had made. Tomorrow the headlines would scream, "Violent waitress attacks, robbers, terrifies diners." Her face would be everywhere. Her quiet life was over. But maybe Julian Sterling was right. Maybe complicated wasn't always bad. Maybe it was time to stop hiding who she really was. Maya Vance sat in the opulent waiting area on the 85th floor of the Sterling Tower, her stomach a knot of apprehension. The gleaming steel and glass skyscraper, a monument to corporate power in the heart of downtown Chicago, was a world away from everything she knew. She had called Julian's office at 9 a.m. sharp, fully expecting a polite brush-off from a secretary. Instead, his executive assistant had scheduled a meeting for 1 hour later. Now she sat on a leather couch that cost more than her last 3 months' rent, second-guessing the impulse that had brought her here. The private elevator doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Julian Sterling stepped out. He wasn't alone. With him was a woman in her late 50s, dressed in a severe but impeccably tailored gray pantsuit. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, missed nothing. Maya's training instantly categorized her: career professional, former law enforcement or intelligence, high-level security. "Ms. Vance," Julian approached, his smile genuine and disarming. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I'd like you to meet Evelyn Reed, my head of corporate security." Evelyn extended a hand, her grip firm and professional. "Ms. Vance, I've been reviewing the preliminary reports from last night's incident. Impressive work." "Thank you," Maya replied, shaking her hand, her guard remaining up. "Evelyn is retiring next month," Julian explained, gesturing for them to walk. 30 years with the Chicago PD, the last 10 with me. Her expertise will be impossible to replace. The implication was as subtle as a sledgehammer. This wasn't a thank you meeting. It was a job interview. Mr. Sterling, Maya stopped, her voice firm. Before we go any further, you need to understand something. I'm not looking for a pity job. If this is some kind of charity offer because you feel bad about what happened last night, I'm not interested. Julian's smile broadened. Excellent. Because charity hires don't typically come with your qualifications. Evelyn held up a tablet, her thumb scrolling through a file that looked alarmingly comprehensive. Maya Vance, 8 years, U.S. Navy, Naval Special Warfare Command, multiple deployments to undisclosed locations in the Middle East and Africa, specialized in close protection, threat neutralization, and covert operations. Honorable discharge with numerous commendations, including the Navy Cross. Maya's blood ran cold. Where did you get that information? The parts that aren't sealed are a matter of public record for those who know where to look, Evelyn replied calmly. What's not public is why a decorated operator with your resume is serving scallops to Chadwick Thorne instead of running a private security detail. That's personal, Maya said, her jaw tight. Fair enough, Evelyn conceded. But if you're going to be responsible for Mr. Sterling's life, I need to know you're not running from something that could become a liability. Maya looked from Julian to Evelyn, the speed of the situation making her head spin. I haven't agreed to anything. Of course not, Julian said smoothly. Let's talk in my office. Evelyn, could you give us a moment? Evelyn nodded curtly and headed back toward the security hub, leaving them alone. Julian led her not to a formal office, but to a comfortable meeting room with a breathtaking panoramic view of Lake Michigan. He closed the door, creating a pocket of silence in the bustling tower. Coffee? Water? I'm fine. Mr. Sterling, what is this really about? He leaned back in his chair, his gaze direct and serious. Do you want the corporate answer or the honest one? Honest. Because what I saw last night fundamentally changed my perspective. I watched a woman with more courage and skill than anyone in that room be vilified for saving them. I watched men I do business with reveal themselves as petty, racist cowards. And I realized that by staying silent in rooms like that for years, I've been complicit. This isn't about charity, Miss Vance. It's about alignment. I want people of character on my team. Maya let his words sink in. So this is about clearing your conscience. Partly, he admitted without shame. But it's also about a critical business need. Evelyn is leaving. I need a new head of security. And frankly, your field experience goes far beyond what a typical corporate security chief brings to the table. You don't know the first thing about me. Julian slid his phone across the polished table. The screen showed a news article. The headline made Maya's stomach clench. Waitress's violent outburst. During restaurant robbery stirs controversy. This is the narrative Thorne and his friends are pushing, Julian said quietly. But then there's this. He swiped, and a video began to play. It was the security footage from Eclat. Leaked. The video was clear, brutal, and completely vindicated her. It showed her surgical precision, her controlled takedowns, her clear effort to protect the diners. The restaurant released it? Maya asked, stunned. No. An anonymous source sent it to an independent journalist who specializes in exposing corporate media bias. It's going viral, and it's completely rewriting the story. The comments section is illuminating. He scrolled down. There were hundreds of comments from military veterans recognizing her tactics, security experts praising her restraint, ordinary people demanding to know why Eclat had fired a hero, and the negative comments were being torn apart as ignorant and cowardly. Maya set the phone down, the viral vindication doing little to solve her immediate problems. She was still jobless, her face was now public, and her life was more complicated than ever. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate the gesture, but I'm an operator, not an executive. I don't have an MBA. I don't know how to navigate a boardroom. My skills are in threat assessment and neutralization. They don't translate to your world. Don't they? He leaned forward, his intensity focused on her. Do you have any idea how many credible death threats I receive in a year? How many fanatical groups see me as a symbol of everything they hate? How many corporate rivals would pay a fortune for my trade secrets, or to have me disappear permanently? She hadn't. In her mind, billionaires lived in a bubble, insulated by their wealth. Evelyn manages all of it, he continued. Threat intelligence, travel security, background checks on every person I interact with, and, when necessary, close personal protection. He paused, his expression hardening. Last month, at a charity gala, a server tried to poison my champagne. Evelyn spotted him. His movements were wrong, his credentials were forged. She pulled me away just in time. The man was a disgraced day trader who'd been paid $100,000 to give me a chemical cocktail that would induce a fatal, untraceable heart attack. The story was a splash of cold reality. This wasn't abstract. The threats were real, intimate, and deadly. Why are you telling me this? Because I need someone who can see what Evelyn sees, but who can also do what you did last night if things go sideways. I need an operator. Maya stood and walked to the vast window, looking down at the city below. It was a world of civilians, of normal lives, of people who didn't have to worry about assassins in server uniforms. You're asking me to step back onto the battlefield, she said, more to herself than to him. I'm asking you to do the job you were trained for in a context where you'll be respected and compensated for it, extremely well. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. Maya returned and unfolded it. The salary figure was staggering. It was more than she had earned in her entire 8-year military career combined. It was life-changing money. That includes full benefits, a 401k matching program, and a significant signing bonus, Julian said, plus hazard pay when situations warrant. She stared at the number, her mind reeling with the possibilities. A safe apartment in a good neighborhood, the ability to help her family, financial security she'd only ever dreamed of. There's a catch, she said, her voice steady. There's always a catch. The catch is that your life will no longer be your own. Working for me puts you in the public eye. You will be scrutinized. Our enemies will become your enemies. They will dig into your past, looking for any weakness, any leverage. Maya thought of the video already spreading across the internet. Her anonymity was already gone. At least this way she'd be getting paid for it. What, specifically, would the job entail? Everything. Personal protection, travel logistics, threat assessment for my business and my personal life, vetting every employee, every contractor, every person who enters my orbit, and investigations. Or, investigations? Corporate espionage is a billion-dollar industry. I need someone who can identify internal threats, moles, compromised employees, and neutralize them before they can do catastrophic damage. She realized he was describing, almost perfectly, the counterintelligence work her unit had specialized in. The context was different, corporate instead of military, but the principles were identical. Can I ask you something? She said, shifting gears. Anything. You're 45, one of the most successful men in the world. Why are you single? He laughed, genuinely surprised by the bluntness of the question. A few reasons. My schedule is insane. Most women I meet are more interested in my portfolio than my personality. And he paused, his expression becoming more serious. I've never met anyone who could truly handle the reality of my life. The bodyguards, the armored cars, the constant threat analysis. It's not romantic. It's exhausting. Maya understood that completely. Her own dating life had been a series of failures. Men who were either intimidated by her past or fetishized it. How do you build a normal relationship when your brain is hardwired to constantly scan for threats? One more question, she said. What happened to the security chief you had before Evelyn? Julian's face darkened. He was compromised. A rival company paid him 7 figures for my travel itineraries and security blind spots. Evelyn discovered it before they could act on the information. But it taught me a valuable lesson. The most important qualification for this job isn't skill. It's unshakable integrity. And how do you know I have that? Because, he said, his gaze unwavering, you had 3 unconscious men at your feet last night, and you chose to disable, not kill, because you let the last man go rather than risk a single civilian life, because you've been living a life far below your abilities rather than selling your skills to the highest bidder. You had every reason to be bitter and violent, and you chose to be a protector. That's integrity. He saw her. In a way no one had in years, he saw the truth of her, past the uniform, past the skin color, past the assumptions. He saw the core of her character. When would you need an answer? Evelyn's last day is in 4 weeks. I'd like a week of overlap for a smooth transition, so, as soon as possible. She looked out at the vast expanse of Lake Michigan, a calm blue horizon. She thought of the freedom this job would offer, the purpose, the chance to use her skills again, not for war, but for protection. Most of all, she thought of his words, unshakable integrity. I'll need some time to think, she said. Of course, take all the time you... His private line buzzed, a sharp, insistent sound. He glanced at the caller ID and his brow furrowed. Excuse me, I have to take this. He picked up the receiver. Sterling. Maya watched as the blood drained from his face. The casual confidence was replaced by a rigid, coiled tension. When? He asked, his voice low. How many people know about this? No, do not involve the police. Not yet. I'll handle this internally. He hung up the phone and looked at Maya, his eyes dark with trouble. What's wrong? She asked, her own senses instantly on high alert. Someone broke into my personal study at my home last night. They bypassed the security system. Nothing was stolen, but my files were accessed. Financials, personal papers, my complete security protocols. Her mind connected the dots with lightning speed. During the robbery at Eclat, she said, the words a statement, not a question. The timing is a perfect match. While I was at the restaurant, watching you, someone was in my house. The implication was a physical shock, hitting them both at the same time. The robbery wasn't just a robbery. It was a diversion. A loud, violent piece of theater designed to draw all attention, including law enforcement, to one location, while a quieter, more sophisticated operation took place somewhere else. Mr. Sterling, Maya said, her voice dropping into its operational calm. I think your problem is bigger than a retiring security chief. You need someone to find out who is targeting you and why. He looked at her, a new urgency in his eyes. Does this change your answer about the job? She thought of Shadow's warning from the night before. Be careful who you trust. Someone was playing a much bigger, deadlier game. Someone who knew Julian's schedule. Someone who could orchestrate a multi-pronged attack. No, she said, the decision solidifying in her gut. It changes my timeline. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you are in active, immediate danger, and waiting for me to think about it might be a luxury neither of us can afford. He studied her face, seeing the shift. The job candidate was gone. The operator was back. Are you accepting the position? Maya looked out the window one last time, then back at Julian Sterling. A man who had offered respect when others offered scorn. A man whose life was now in her hands. A man who desperately needed a protector. I'm saying your new head of security started 5 minutes ago. Now tell me everything. What do you think is hiding in Julian Sterling's files? And who could be behind such a sophisticated plot? Let me know your theories in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this ride, make sure you've hit that like button. We're just getting started. Julian Sterling's Lincoln Park mansion was a modern fortress of glass and steel, but Maya Vance saw only its weaknesses. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sniper's paradise. Multiple access points, a sprawling garden, and neighbors just far enough away to see nothing. For an operator like her, it was a tactical nightmare. The alarm system was disarmed from inside, Evelyn Reed explained, her voice grim as they stepped into the grand foyer. Whoever did this had the master codes. Maya examined the high-tech security panel. Biometric scanners, military-grade encryption, layered motion sensors. Bypassing it wasn't a smash-and-grab job. It required either elite technical skills or an inside source. How many people have these codes? Maya asked, her mind already building a suspect list. 12, Julian answered from behind her. Myself, Evelyn, my housekeeper, Maria, my personal assistant, Chloe, my driver, Robert, a handful of other key staff and emergency contacts. He paused. As of this morning, you're the 13th. A cold dread trickled down Maya's spine. The timing was too perfect. It was possible the conspirators had anticipated Julian hiring her after the restaurant incident, that her very presence was part of their calculus. Evelyn led them to Julian's study. At first glance, the room was immaculate, but Maya's eyes saw what a civilian's would miss. Micro-abrasions on the lock of a steel filing cabinet, a faint fingerprint smudge on a glass surface that should have been pristine, a stack of documents misaligned by less than a millimeter. This was professional work, Maya said, her voice low. Government or ex-government, they weren't rushed. They took their time. Evelyn displayed the security log on her tablet. System was disarmed at 8:52 p.m., reactivated at 11:47 p.m., nearly 3 hours of uninterrupted access. Right when the robbery at Eclat started, Julian said, the pieces falling into a sickening pattern. Maya moved to Julian's desk. What exactly is in these files? What would be valuable enough to orchestrate a fake mass casualty event? Everything, Julian said. Business contracts, R&D for proprietary technology, personal financial records, and the complete architectural and security schematics for this house and my office. So they know every camera placement, every blind spot, every response protocol, Maya stated bluntly. They know exactly how to get to you, exactly how to kill you. Just then, Evelyn's secure phone rang. Reed, when? Are you certain? Her face, already grim, darkened further. Hold him. No one else gets near him until we arrive. She ended the call. That was Detective Harding. They picked up one of the robbers from last night. Dante Reyes. He's asking to speak with you. And only you. The news sent a jolt through Maya. Shadow wanted to talk. That meant he had information. Information he wouldn't give to the police. Information that could connect the robbery to the break-in. I'm going with you, Julian said immediately. Absolutely not, Maya's response was swift and final. A police precinct is a public space. If you're being actively targeted, it's the last place you should be. You stay here with Evelyn. Lock this place down. Maya's right, Evelyn agreed. If this is a coordinated campaign, splitting us up is exactly what they'd want. Julian looked ready to argue, but the hard logic in their eyes stopped him. Fine, but I want a full debrief the second you're out. You'll get it, Maya promised. The 11th District Police Station was a hive of controlled chaos. Detective Harding met Maya at the entrance, her expression a mix of professional curiosity and concern. Ms. Vance, thanks for coming. Reyes has been adamant. Says he has info on a conspiracy, but it's for your ears only. Where'd you find him? An old warehouse on the south side, just where you said he wouldn't be. Harding said with a wry smile. You want to tell me how you really knew him? Maya had been preparing for this. We grew up in the same neighborhood. Our families knew each other. She decided to offer a piece of the truth. His older brother, Rico, I helped him once, a long time ago. His grandmother told us the story, Harding revealed. Said you pulled him out of a gang fight, saved his life. Said Rico never forgot it. Apparently neither did Dante. The memory was a ghost, sharp and painful. Rico Reyes, bleeding out in a grimy alley, a 15-year-old Dante, paralyzed with shock, and a 17-year-old Maya, her hands slick with blood, using skills she'd only read about in military prep manuals to keep him alive. That was a long time ago, Maya said, her voice tight. Long enough for Dante to recognize you and call off a hit that could have gone very, very wrong, Harding countered, leading her down a hallway to the interview rooms. Dante sat at a cold metal table, cuffed. Without the mask, he looked older, the lines on his face carved by a hard life. When he saw her, a flicker of relief crossed his features. Maya, he said, his voice raspy. Thank God. She took the seat opposite him. Harding says you have information. Not with her in the room. He gestured with his head toward Harding. This is for you. Anything you tell me, I share with them, Maya stated, leaving no room for negotiation. The girl you knew from the neighborhood is gone, Dante. If you're looking for street loyalty, you've got the wrong person. He studied her face, seeing the operator she'd become. Fair enough. But you need to listen. What I'm about to tell you, it's going to put a target on your back. I'm listening. The robbery. It wasn't our idea, he began, leaning forward. We were hired. A third party. Serious money, serious connections. They knew your boss, Sterling, would be at Eclat last night. They gave us the time, the table number, everything. He paused, taking a ragged breath. Maya, it wasn't supposed to be a robbery. It was a hit. They wanted us to kill Julian Sterling. The room seemed to tilt. An assassination? $5 million, Dante continued, to make it look like a robbery gone wrong, a rich guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why didn't you go through with it? His hard expression softened. Because you were there. Because I owe you for Rico. Killing anyone is business. Killing someone in front of you. That felt like sacrilege. Maya's mind raced, processing the implications. The robbery was a cover for an assassination. The break-in was to get the security plans for the next attempt. Who was the intermediary? Who hired you? A weasel named Kevin Fisher, manager at the restaurant. Maya's blood turned to ice. Kevin, the nervous, obsequious manager who had fired her. He was the inside man. Dante, this is critical. Did Fisher mention anyone else? A name, a company, anything? He mentioned some hedge fund prick, Chadwick Thorne. Said the order came from people way above his pay grade, people with political clout. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Maya, these ain't gangsters. These are the guys in suits, the ones who run the world. Chadwick Thorne. The man who had publicly humiliated her was part of a conspiracy to murder Julian Sterling. Did they know about me? Maya asked, a horrifying thought dawning. My background? Fisher seemed shocked when you took my crew apart, but the people behind him. Who knows? The whole thing felt too perfect, almost like they knew a protector would be there. Was it possible? Had her placement at Eclat been part of the plan? To frame her for the murder? To eliminate her as a witness? One more question, Maya said. Why are you telling me this now? Dante's eyes grew heavy with a grief that looked fresh, raw. Rico, he died last month. Cancer. It came on fast. His voice cracked. Before he went, he made me promise. If you ever came back, if you ever needed anything, I was to look out for you. You gave him 10 extra years, Maya. He never forgot. Neither did I. The news was a gut punch. Rico was dead. I'm sorry, Dante. Don't be, he said, shaking his head. Be careful. I think these people did something to him. He was delivering catering to a suite at the Fairmont a few months back. Said he saw Thorne, Fisher, and some high society dame talking about Sterling. Heard them mention an accident. A week later, he got sick. The doctors said it was the most aggressive cancer they'd ever seen. Poison. A sophisticated, untraceable poison designed to mimic a terminal illness. They hadn't just planned to kill Julian. They had murdered a witness to cover their tracks. Dante, Maya said, her voice now cold with resolve. I need you to tell Detective Harding everything. Fisher, Thorne, the hit, what happened to Rico, all of it. What about my time? You cooperate on a conspiracy of this magnitude, it could help you. I'll talk to the ADA. He nodded slowly. Just do one thing for me. What's that? Be careful, Maya. These people don't play. They smile in your face while they're signing your death warrant. Don't trust anyone. I won't. As she left the room, Harding was waiting. Well? Everything, Maya said. And we're in a bigger war than we thought. She pulled out her phone, dialing Julian's secure line. He answered on the first ring. Maya, what did you find out? We need to talk. In person. And Julian? Yes? Pack a bag. You're not spending another night in that house. The conspiracy was deeper, darker, and more personal than she could have imagined. They were racing against an enemy who was always one step ahead, an enemy who had already proven they were willing to kill anyone who got in their way. And now, they knew Maya Vance was standing between them and their prize. Thank you for staying with me on this incredible journey. If this story has your heart pounding, wait until you see what's next. It's a tale of betrayal and redemption that will leave you breathless. Don't go anywhere. Click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now to dive into another story that will change the way you see the world. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.